Hi, I'm Sharaad Kuttan and welcome to Let's Talk, the show that brings you the most important conversations of the day. What could be more important to our lives than music? Music, of course, is everywhere. It's on our televisions, on our devices, it's in the air. But do we spare thought about the musicians themselves and their lives? Of course, there are many who are super rich and glamorous, but there are many who also struggle. And to help me understand the struggles of Malaysian musicians, I have three wonderful people who have come together with something called Musicians for Musicians. It's an effort to create awareness about the lives of musicians, their welfare, and how we can help them better. I have with me Lieutenant Colonel John Sham Scratch, Eddie Zachariah, and Francis Danker. So, John, Francis, and Eddie, thank you so much for joining me. Your benefit's going to happen on the 15th of March, I understand. But before we get to that, perhaps we could start with you, John. I know you just retired from the Air Force, and you got your own band, you play guitar, and you sing.
Yes, I do.
As you say. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your musical journey, because it's very interesting. You're a military man, as it were, armed forces, but then you get into music. How did that whole thing happen?
Yeah, I used to play music when I was 10 years of age, and I started getting to DJing when I was 16. I was really interested in that.
And therefore the name Scratch?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And so I was a DJ before I joined the Air Force.
Right,
I was a professional disc jockey in KL, and then I joined the Air Force. 25 years later, I retired, and after retired, started a band. I was supposed to actually, I'm in transition to join the commercial airlines, but after meeting Mr. Francis and the musicians, I thought the idea of musicians for musicians really great, and so I joined the organization, and that's how I ended up here. And
Right.
with the
Okay, so
benefits
this is
also.
fairly new. I mean, these friendships are new, are they, for you, John?
No, I've known Mr. Francis for long. I think it was during the Top of the Pops days. Yeah.
Okay.
He's a seasoned man in the industry.
Okay, so Mr. Francis Danker, a lot of respect I feel in the room for you. Maybe from a slightly different generation, but you look very young for your age. Francis, tell us a little bit about your own musical journey.
We started in the late 60s when I left school, 68. Then we started in the old town, Petaling Jaya. That was called the Liverpool of PJ, because all the bands were in all the corners, and we were playing for $40 a night. And you know, we go home with $2 each in our pocket after having a supper and all that. So that was it. All started those days. Then it slowly grew, and we started playing at the first club in PJ called the Cellar. So that's where memory started at the executive grill on top of the Cellar.
Right.
And that was the
Where's
early
the cellar? I
70s.
mean, location-wise in PJ?
Just right opposite PJ Hilton. Now it's called, it was Jaipuri at one time.
Right, okay. So you already started to get into some of the nitty-gritty, the real lives of musicians, right? $40 for the show, for all of you?
Yeah.
All together, not each?
The whole band.
The whole band got $40, okay.
Yeah.
And you go back with 2 ringgit, okay. Now, perhaps in the 70s that was a lot. I don't know what you could do with 2 ringgit
money,
then.
yeah.
But the question is, because have wages improved and the welfare of musicians improved? I mean, you've had a long commitment to music. Now it's what?
I've been playing professionally in all the clubs, pubs, and nightclubs. Even out of Malaysia, even in Taiwan and all that. So 25 years I was doing that, and I know, and that those days the bands they had a lot of work, and we used to work 6 months. I used to work 6 months in Piccadilly, 6 months in Beer Garden, in Ampang Park. These are all the venues that don't exist anymore, and those were the good old glory days of the bands. You know, so the bands were really having a good time, and we were enjoying our music, even though the money wasn't that good, but we had a good time.
Right. So there was passion, and things were good generally in terms of work.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's turn to you, Eddie. You're a keyboardist. You have a band called Easy Band. Tell us about your own trajectory through music.
I started playing music in the early 80s. Started off as a solo pianist, and then I got involved with bands and with some top 40 bands, traveled around also as well. And then about 20 years ago, I went on my own with an agency. So the agency basically manages me and my band, and we other few musicians, and then we do events, you know. But as Francis was saying, those were the good old days, you know.
Yeah, I love when people use the expression good old days, because then you know that something turned. There was a point in which things stopped being the good old days and things got really tough for musicians in the live music scene. Tell us about Musicians for Musicians. And this is an organization. Who set it up? Whose brainchild was it? And was it yours, Francis? Could you tell us a little bit about why you decided to push for something like this?
I've been getting a lot of musicians coming to me for help, you know, for dialysis, no money for dialysis, and a lot of medical problems, and you know, a lot of problems, because those who were playing music during my time, we are all in our late 60s, and I'm already 70 already, and it's not easy to get work, and if they don't have a proper foundation, they're going through a hard time. So, and I noticed in the papers, you know, there is always a fundraising in this pub and that pub for somebody who died. So I told myself, we're not going to be helping people who are gone. We should be helping people when they're still alive.
Right.
So that's why I said, no, I think enough is enough. I think we should all, just let's get the musicians together. Instead of getting, I could get some professionals out here, but then I think the musicians we should get together and we should help our own people.
Right. And so how many, John, tell us, how many people are part of it? Why did you decide to be part of it too?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because people ask me why you leave the Air Force, supposed to join the airlines, you know, and that's where live is supposed to be, and why do you join this organization? I'm the secretary of Musicians for Musicians. I mean, I look at the cause, and I look at the vision that they have. It's really great, because alleviating or enhancing the lives of musicians that is alive today, it's something that we never thought of. We thought of, like, you know, something happened to someone, we go and give them a big sum and that's it. But how about those who are actually going through hardship? And when I saw the organization, so Musicians for Musicians is spearheaded under Persatuan Pemuzik Tempatan Selangor. So it's registered under ROS, and so it comprises professionals from every background. We have musicians, music lovers, as well as even people like Frankie, who's got a background of
Frankie De Cruz.
Yeah, Frankie
my
De Cruz.
former boss, who urged me to bring you on the show. Yeah,
it's amazing to see how the teamwork within the organization. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And before we take a short break, Eddie, tell me, I mean, what is your contribution to this organization?
Putting everything together, because you see, we're not only helping the senior musicians also, you know, like Francis said, they need medical help, and you know, with issues, we are looking forward to bring it down to the next generation also. So like, I'm in the middle bracket, like, you know, yeah, my time I started in the 80s, so I'm friends with senior musicians as well as the junior musicians, so trying to reach out to them. So they're going to take over this association anyway tomorrow. We are just doing the foundation stone for the whole thing, you know, so now it's up to them in the next 4 or 5 years. It's their turn to, you know, help themselves out and their peers and their generation out.
Right, okay, wonderful. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned to Let's Talk. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Sharaad Kuttan. With me, John Sham Scratch, Francis Danker, and Eddie's Zachariah. They're all part of an organization, an effort to bring musicians together and to get them to help each other out in the kinds of challenges that many of them face. Let's talk about that. Francis, you mentioned, and I noticed too, news stories about once famous musician somehow on the street, now lost or suffering mental health problems, or say dialysis, or having kidney problems, without the kind of safety net. What happened? Why wasn't there a safety net for musicians in this segment of the industry?
Well, nobody bothers, I think, because as a musician, when you were younger and you were playing in the clubs, everybody's there for you. They buy you things, they take you out, they go supper. Everything is being, you've got friends all over the place. So, but when you get older, the friends also get older. They got their life, and we got to take care of our life. So they're not going to be beside you all the time. You see, so that's why organizing this, we actually trying to reach out to all our old friends who were there for us when we were young, to come back and support this cause.
Right. I want to ask about, I mean, personal responsibility, because I'm somebody who, you know, and I admit this on national television, I don't have a retirement plan. I should have a retirement plan, you know, but I do have EPF and so on and so forth as a buffer, right? This is something the government put in place for me or somebody who's earning a salary. When it comes to musicians, is there EPF, is there SOCSO?
See, we are contract workers. We work 3 months here, 3 months there, and EPF, and at that time when I was in the union, you know, with
Musicians union?
Yeah, musicians union. We had a union in those days, and we fought for EPF, and EPF said no. There's no way you can get EPF if you are a contract worker. You got to be a regular worker. That means a regular salary, like you get as a regular salary. But we don't have it. You see, we might work 3 months, and then for the next 3 months, we might be out of job. So who's going to contribute? Because you pay the employee pay a certain sum, and the employer pay another the bulk of it. You see, so that's why we don't qualify for EPF. We tried our best. We fought hard, but they just took us down. In fact, I don't blame them, because why? We are contract workers.
Right. So the question was then, in the absence of that kind of security that comes from EPF, what was put in place? So what was the thinking behind somehow securing a safety net for people in the industry, in your segment of the industry?
You see, most of the musicians, those days, I mean my time, most of them are all, we didn't do well in school. Playing music is one avenue where we could make a living, and it was.
But you had talent.
Yeah. So
yeah.
That's talent.
I mean, not everybody who finishes school can play can play a musical instrument.
That's the easiest way to get a job, because you don't have to go to school to study. I didn't pass my Form 5, but you know, because I love to play music, and it was paying my bills, so that's why I went for it. But then along the line, I went into business. I went into managing bands. I went into rental of equipment, and I was playing for functions, corporate functions. And I was telling myself, why don't I go and organize corporate functions? So that's where I started my own event company.
So you're pretty secure then.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was your decision to become a businessman, to get out of that particular narrow band of the
not
segment.
all musicians had that vision like I had.
Right.
You see, they all, until today, there are a lot of my friends who were playing with me are still playing music, because there's nothing else they could do.
Right. And that's a very interesting thing. I mean, Eddie, tell us about this whole, I mean, maybe it's also a cultural issue, right? I mean, one thinks of musicians as carefree and wild, and, you know, I mean, people living for the moment. These may be stereotypes, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, do they think that there will come a time when they will get old, or that they might actually get sick, and that somehow they themselves have to put in place a safety net for themselves?
Yes, you see, like not every one of them thinks that way. One of the reasons, like if you talk about the musicians those days, because there was no security to start off in the first place. Okay, so like Francis was saying, you do a gig for 6 months, and maybe the next 3 months you wouldn't have a job. You know, so the 3 months that you don't work, you're using what you have reserved in the last 6 months to pay the rent for these 3 months, you know. And it was basically, if you can say it, hand to mouth. We know musicians who have been evicted from their homes, who can't even afford the bus fare to go to work. You know, those days without telephone, they'll call you, can you meet me at the bus stand and, you know, give me some money for the bus ride, you know, things like that. So it was very unfortunate that the things that the musicians those days went through, there was no security. And anyway, if they wanted to save in EPF and all that also, which didn't allow them to do so, they had no extras to buy an insurance policy. But today we see the younger generation doing so. They've got medical cards a bit, few of them, you know, some insurance savings and doing their own EPF and SOCSO. But those days, no.
Okay. John, tell me, do you think that the industry owes musicians something? They should have thought this problem through, that the pubs that depend on the talent that comes from bands should have thought to themselves, if we don't actually help the musicians help themselves, that down the line we're going to pay the price of declining welfare and maybe even the death of an industry, right? Do you think that they should have come in? That pub owners should have been thinking about this?
Yeah, I think it's wholesome work, not only the pub owners, but actually I would say the government as well. Why I'm saying that is because Mr. Francis speaks about education limiter. I don't, because they've got a limit background of education and they get to music. But today we find musicians are educated. People go to school, they study music, they get degrees, diplomas in music, but it's the same thing because it's the same salary and like what Eddie says.
They're not getting 40 ringgit for the
no,
band.
No, of course not. If 40 ringgit, you can't even pay for a Grab. No, I'm just kidding. But the thing is, yeah, average, I would say 250 to 300 ringgit. But that's not enough because the initiative for SOCSO, EPF and medicals is their own. It's not like an organization top up for their SOCSO. So there's nothing. If the musician decides not to plan for himself, there's nothing planned for him. In the long run, it's going to end up like in the days of old. That's the reason why the benefit concert, that's inspired the benefit concert actually, to look into the musicians. But today, I would say the same thing. If the musicians today do not think and plan their future, they're going to end up like that. It's very sad to see those are the musicians that actually inspire people. You put a smile on somebody at the pub, but when you are sick and ill, nobody put a smile on your face.
Right. Okay, we'll take another short break and we'll be back with more. Stay tuned to Let's Talk. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Sharaad. With me are John, Francis and Eddie. They're all part of an organization called Musicians for Musicians, and they're putting together a benefits happening on the 15th of March. It's going to be a huge collection, a congregation, a gathering of musicians. The names I see are quite phenomenal. The question is why? Francis, tell us, you were the one who thought about this idea of bringing all these musicians together and the benefit. What were you hoping to do?
When I came up with this idea, I was thinking to myself, we got to do something big. We're not going to go to a pub and raise $2,000, $3,000. So I said, I told a couple of guys, said, why don't we bring all those bands that don't exist anymore in the 70s and 80s? You know, the bands Delta, Falcons, and all that. The guys are overseas, haven't seen each other for donkey's years, and they were playing in the clubs and the pubs that don't exist anymore. So it's just nice to talk about bringing these bands again, and people are talking, hey, are you sure these bands are going to come back? And then and we are talking about the venues who don't exist. We like to see pictures of those venues like the Beer Garden, the Tomorrow Disco, the Glass Bubble, the Cellar. Those were the action areas which everybody used to hang out.
Has anybody done a history? Because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Is there a book that brings together these memories of places?
I think we should be writing one soon.
Yeah, well, I used to live in a place called Happy Mansion. Apparently there was a bar there, and a musician told me that once he didn't do the request of a customer, he came out and found his motorcycle on fire. So, there are great stories to be told about the life of pubs. Okay, so the idea was to do it big, remember the people, bring everybody
and
back.
And to play the songs you were playing those days.
Right.
If you were playing Long Train Running, play the song. So when we got Headwind to come in, and I spoke to Zainal.
Is that CCR?
Zainal, no, Headwind. So I spoke to Dr. Zainal, and I told him, hey, look, I don't want you to sing Hijau, I want you to sing Jump. That's what I saw you sing at the Rainbow, and everybody went wild when you sang. So that's what we want to hear. We want you to hear those kind of stuff.
Okay, so it's a bit of nostalgia, bringing together, but there's a cause, right? There's a cause. What is the cause?
The cause is actually to look after the benefits of musicians. And those people, the recipients of this, it's actually our era, the 70s and the 80s era. These are the people who are facing the real problems today.
Right. So this money, and you have a target sum that you're looking at?
Yeah, we are hoping to raise $500,000.
Okay, $500,000 goes to the organization Musicians for Musicians, which will be a fund.
We have a board of trustees.
Oh, board of trustees. Eddie, tell me a little bit about who's coming, and then we'll talk about the board of trustees.
We've got about 30 acts for the night, about 100 musicians, and lots of the musicians are people from that era. You got the soloists Albert Serimal and Bala, Gerard Singh. We are flying Royston Santa Maria down from Perth, and he's going to team up with Fran. We are flying musicians Frankie Samuel from Germany, Chris from Auckland. So, you know, everybody's getting back together, and some of them have not played together for 20, 25 years.
Okay, so that's the nostalgia. But I mean, how do you reach out? Because this benefit, is it in the ticket that the donations will come, or are you expecting people to also, on top of that, put down money? I mean, how does it work?
Admission is by $100 donation, and you get a pass to come in. And then we have food stalls and drink stalls and everything inside. So it's on a coupon system, and part of the proceeds goes to the benefit also.
Okay, but do you expect to get younger people, people who are not from this era, people who perhaps not from the Klang Valley, who might not remember those names? How do you draw them? Because you'll need numbers, right?
Yes, yes. Actually, I know personally quite a number of youngsters who are coming. They are coming because they want to watch for themselves what the bands those days were like. They're just very interested, and lots of big names. We have lots of big names, you know. So for this, the younger ones, this is going to be like a classroom session for them also. They get to see their idols.
Okay, John, I mean, since you're the youngest,
Oh, yes.
I guess.
Thank you very much.
Are you the youngest?
Yes, I am.
Almost, you are, okay.
I'm proud to say that.
Okay.
Right.
Well, it's no credit to you. It's just,
It's by default, right?
It's an accident of history, being young. Okay, tell us, how do you plan to reach out to more people so you get the numbers and you get the volume and so you achieve their targets?
See, most of the musicians that's going to perform are basically those who have actually inspired the younger musicians for today. Most of them are their teachers, the music inspired them, and they have seen, and some of them are the children of those musicians who are actually playing, and a lot of them are really, they know, I mean, it's as much as we think that they might not know, a lot of them know the names that's going to be playing on the day. So, I mean, I work with younger musicians today in the scene and with younger bands, and I understand that they're all excited to come as well.
Right. Okay, and where, Eddie, where is this happening? It's 15th of March?
15th of March at the Mines Resort Exhibition Center.
Okay, and how do we get? How do people get tickets? What are the logistics of finding a ticket for the show?
There are two ways of getting a ticket. One is to log into RateTix. You can buy it online, or we also have physical tickets. So at the moment, it's at Music Mart. This is a music school. It's all on the website. At the same time, we are also looking at putting these tickets in different locations, and we'll advise.
Okay, okay, wonderful. And Francis, last word from you. Are you getting the kind of support? You say people in the industry are coming together.
Oh yeah. You see, the whole idea kicked off when we had a full sponsored show. The sound and lights were sponsored, the venue was sponsored, and all the logistics sponsored. So we're actually getting a show free of charge. If we have to pay for this, we will not get any money because this venue is huge. Huge. We got 8 LED screens down there. So it's going to be running from 2 in the afternoon to midnight. It might even go later than that. So I personally would like to encourage people to pool together, at least 12 people, and get a table booked. We have tables out there. So get a table booked. You can come at whatever time. You can come at 7 o'clock. If the band is playing at 9 o'clock, you can come at 8 o'clock. You have a table there. So I will advise them to pool 12 people together, book a table.
Okay, and a table for a very, very good cause. So thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show. Wish you all the best of luck. We'll put all that information on the screens, and hopefully you get the numbers you are looking for. Right?
Thank you very much.
Right. So I've been speaking to Lieutenant Colonel John Sham, Francis Adanka, and Eddie Zachariah. They're all part of Musicians for Musicians. They're having a benefit on the 15th of March at, where was it again?
Mines Convention Center.
Mines Convention Center. That's all we have for Let's Talk. I'm Sharaad Kuttan, only for Astro AWANI.